Rule 2, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. People are better at filling and properly administering prescription medication to their pets than to themselves. In any case, that which we subjectively experience can be likened much more to a novel or a movie than to a scientific description of physical reality. It is the drama of lived experience, the unique, tragic, personal death of your father, compared to the objective death listed in the hospital records, the pain of your first love, the despair of dashed hopes, the joy attendant upon a child's success. The world of experience has primal constituents, as well. These are the necessary elements whose interactions define drama and fiction. One of these is chaos. Another is order. The third, as there are three, is the process that mediates between the two, which appears identical to what modern people call consciousness. It is our eternal subjugation to the first two that makes us doubt the validity of existence, that makes us throw up our hands in despair, and fail to care for ourselves properly. It is proper understanding of the third that allows us the only real way out. When the ice you're skating on is solid, that's order. When the bottom drops out, and things fall apart, and you plunge through the ice, that's chaos. Our categories are far older than our species. Our most basic category as old, in some sense, as the sexual act itself appears to be that of sex, male and female. We appear to have taken that primordial knowledge of structured, creative opposition and begun to interpret everything through its. Most men do not meet female human standards. It is for this reason that women on dating sites rate 85% of men as below average in attractiveness. The very hemispheric structure of the cortex reflects the fundamental division between novelty, the unknown, or chaos, and routinization, the known. We eternally inhabit order, surrounded by chaos. We eternally occupy known territory, surrounded by the unknown. We experience meaningful engagement when we mediate appropriately between them. When life suddenly reveals itself as intense, gripping and meaningful, when time passes and you're so engrossed in what you're doing you don't notice it is there and then that you are located precisely on the border between order and chaos. The worst of all possible snakes is the eternal human proclivity for evil. The worst of all possible snakes is psychological, spiritual, personal, internal. This is the great Freudian Oedipal nightmare. It is far better to render beings in your care competent than to protect them. How could the nature of man ever reach its full potential without challenge and danger? How dull and contemptible would we become if there was no longer reason to pay attention? Dr. Lynn Isbell, professor of anthropology and animal behavior at the University of California, has suggested that the stunningly acute vision almost uniquely possessed by human beings was an adaptation forced on us tens of millions of years ago by the necessity of detecting and avoiding the terrible danger of snakes, with whom our ancestors. Unlike us, predators have no comprehension of their fundamental weakness, their fundamental vulnerability, their own subjugation to pain and death. But we know exactly how and where we can be hurt, and why. That is as good a definition as any of self-consciousness. We are aware of our own defenselessness, finitude, and mortality. We can feel pain, and self-disgust, and shame, and horror, and we know it. We know what makes us suffer. We know how dread and pain can be inflicted on us, and that means we know exactly how to inflict it on others. We know how we are naked, and how that nakedness can be exploited, and that means we know how others are naked, and how they can be exploited. And no one understands the darkness of the individual better than the individual himself. Who, then, when ill, is going to be fully committed to his own care? If we wish to take care of ourselves properly, we would have to respect ourselves, but we don't, because we are not least in our own eyes fallen creatures. If we lived in truth, if we spoke the truth, then we could walk with God once again, and respect ourselves, and others, and the world. Then we might treat ourselves like people we cared for. We might strive to set the world straight. We might orient it toward heaven, where we would want people we cared for to dwell, instead of hell, where our resentment and hatred would eternally sentence everyone. There are so many ways that things can fall apart, or fail to work altogether, and it is always wounded people who are holding it together. To treat yourself as if you were someone you are responsible for helping is, instead, to consider what would be truly good for you. This is not what you want. It is also not what would make you happy. You need to consider the future and think, what might my life look like if I were caring for myself properly? You could help direct the world, on its careening trajectory, a bit more toward heaven and a bit more away from hell. Once having understood hell, researched it, so to speak, particularly your own individual hell, you could decide against going there or creating that. You could aim elsewhere. You could, in fact, devote your life to this.